Good evening. I'm so delighted to welcome our friends from RMIT to kick off our Asia Society Hong Kong's season of Australia. And I'm those of you who have not had a chance to meet, I see some new faces, which is great. I am Alice Mong, President of Asia Society Hong Kong. And it is a great pleasure for me to host tonight's program because we have distinguished speakers from Australia, and I'm going to, we want to welcome Alec Cameron, Vice Chancellor and President of RMIT. Our speaker later on, Alex Bailey, Head of Global Strategic Innovation at AT&T Business International, and also an RMIT alum, and my colleague, Anthony Bobolo, who is CEO of Asia Society Australia. I feel like I know Anthony so well, but we've only met just about an hour ago. So Anthony, welcome to Hong Kong. It's been a while since you've been here. And really, this is the beginning of, we're going to be collaborating quite a bit. In fact, under Anthony's leadership, we already had a joint program about a month and a half ago talking about the US elections. And it was Anthony's brilliant idea to talk about the US election from an Asian perspective. So 4 centers, ourselves, Asia Society Hong Kong, India, Japan, and there was a live audience in Australia. And, it was Anthony's idea to invite some of the people here in Asia, business leaders or people involved who are interested in the U.S. election. So I know the program went off really well and it was very well received. So I know we're going to be doing future collaborations with our center in Australia. So Anthony, welcome. And also I want to thank the Consul General, William, for being here, and really thank you for your support and your colleagues' support because this is the first of the kickoff to the season of Australia, but we also have 2 other programs coming up. I think I think you might have seen it on the advertising. We're going to have a wonderful program on October 21st, Warning to the World, Australia's Climate Disaster. It's a documentary that CNN has done, and we're going to be we'll be showing it. The Hong Kong premiere will be here on October 21st. And then November 2nd, we're going to be screening a documentary about Michelle Garneau, M on the Bun fame, and Michelle will be here. And we've just changed, I think if those of you try to buy a ticket, it's sold out. We're changing venue. It'll probably be here because we're going to expect more than 100 people it's already sold out. Originally, it was going to be our Miller Theater. So please join us on November 2nd, those of you who are interested to hear directly from Michelle and see the film. So this is the exciting time, to have visitors in Hong Kong. And for us, I know many of you are here in Hong Kong, RMIT alums. Can I kind of see a show of hand? Who first time here at Asia Society in Hong Kong? You guys are the one I want to get to know better and introduce you to the beauty of Asia Society Hong Kong. Not only do we have the venues, and I know Peter and our friends at ANZ, some of you already know about Asia Society Hong Kong. Those of you who do not, please talk to us. If you would like to become a member, we will welcome that. And we're going to it's not just Australia. Australia is very critical. This is our Season of Australia program. And the Season of Australia started is because Asia Society in New York has a wonderful exhibition. Those of you who have a chance to be in New York from now until January, this wonderful Aboriginal art. It's the first time, I think, arts from the First Nations from Australia is showing in institution like Asia Society. So the show has gotten great reviews in New York Times, and it opened, I had the chance to see it. And so, in fact, in talking to Joanna and others, if there are a way of bringing an exhibition like that here to Hong Kong, we certainly would love to talk about it. But this is what Asia Society is about. It's about connections. And that's why tonight's program is about connection. RMIT has been, I have been long admiring RMIT's collaboration here because I've met some of the alum and some artists has been working with the Hong Kong Arts School for about 25 years, as I understand it. So it's wonderful that you all can be here and that we can host it, and then we can continue to collaborate with the consulate and also with Anthony. So with that, I'm going to welcome Anthony to say a few words, and then afterward, we'll get the program started. Anthony?
Thanks, Alice. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening for the Australia-Hong Kong Alumni Celebration. It's a pleasure for several reasons. First, it's a pleasure to be here for me, first time, at our sister centre, Asia Society Hong Kong. As Alice mentioned, we've spoken together a lot over the interwebs, but it's the first time we've actually met face-to-face, and I can see that we are going to have a lot of fun scheming together to do more. I have to say also, RMIT hosts our headquarters in Melbourne. We have a very nice office there, but I have a very serious case of building envy right now, Alice. So if anyone is looking to build a building in Melbourne, let me know. It's also a pleasure to be here working with RMIT. RMIT is one of our most important partners in Australia. As I said, they host our headquarters at their Melbourne City campus, but more importantly, we're working together on a range of projects and initiatives that leverage the Asia expertise and networks of both organisations. For example, we're currently working on a project funded by the Australian government, looking at practical ways for Australian businesses to partner with Southeast Asian Australians to promote trade and investment in the region. We're ambitious for this partnership. Working together, we want to be leaders and innovators in the field of Asia literacy, not just in Australia, but globally. And here I also want to recognise the leadership of RMIT Vice-Chancellor Alec Cameron, who's speaking today. Running a university is not an easy thing these days, especially in Australia. Probably marginally easier than in the US at the moment, but it's pretty challenging in Australia for a whole range of reasons. But the strength and the success and the momentum of our partnership reflects Alec's open-minded, practical and impact-focused leadership of RMIT. I think being an engineer actually helps ensuring that things actually work and work very well. I'd also like to recognise our sponsor this evening, ANZ Hong Kong, and to thank them for their support, and to recognise Peter Chan, the CEO of ANZ in Hong Kong, who's here with us this evening. ANZ is a valued corporate member of Asia Society Australia, not least because of its deep network and knowledge of Asia. And I'd also like to thank the Australian Consul General in Hong Kong for their support for this event, and recognise Consul General Gareth Williams, who's with us this evening. And finally, I'd like to thank the Australian Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong and recognise the AUSCHAM Chief Executive, Patricia Slawinska, who's also, I think, with us here this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Asia Society is a global organisation whose mission is to understand Asia and its role in the world. But each centre has its own specific mission, and for us in Australia, it is to advance Australia's prosperity and security in Asia. We define prosperity and security broadly. Prosperity is not just material wealth, but it's also cultural and artistic wealth. Security is not just physical security, but also social cohesion. Our goal is not just to advance Australia's prosperity and security in Asia, but also with Asia. In that regard, alumni and diaspora play critical roles. This includes the alumni of Australian universities in Asia, something that we're celebrating here tonight. It also includes the Australian diaspora in Asia and the Asian diaspora in Australia, as well as those born in Australia of Asian heritage. These groups support Australia's prosperity and security in at least three ways. First, they add thousands of strands of connective tissue between Australia and Asia, reflecting business and educational ties, as well as cultural and family ties. And in my view, the more connective tissue there is between Australia and the countries of the region, the more resilient and enduring will our relationships be. In particular, it means that if there are strains or even breaks in one area of Australia's relations with Asia, as happens from time to time, there are other pieces of connective tissue to pick up the slack and maintain the connections while those strains are being repaired. Second, alumni and diasporas ensure that Australia has a contemporary understanding of Asia, and Asia has a contemporary understanding of Australia. And I think this is especially vital at a time when Asia, in particular, is changing rapidly. Indeed, like one of the ironies of the current era is that we have never had more information about each other, yet we seem to understand each other less. Part of the problem is that there is so much information and misinformation and disinformation that it's difficult to know what to trust and who to trust. And here, the personal experience and networks of alumni become a critical filter for judging what information about a country we should rely upon and what we should ignore. Third, alumni and diaspora are a great source of Asia literacy, by which I mean a deep understanding of Asia, how it works and how to work in it. This is particularly important in Australia, where our Asia literacy is declining at a time when it needs to be rising. I would argue that Australia does not make enough use of its alumni and diasporas, both Australian diasporas in the region and Asian diasporas in Australia, and that this is something that we at Asia Society Australia are trying to fix in a number of ways. We're doing it through partnerships with Asian Australians to share their understanding and networks in the region, through greater effort to connect the expertise of Australians living and working in the region to business and government at home. My hope that this will be part of our work, part of our partnership with Asia Society Hong Kong, so stay tuned. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the evening.
And can I now invite Vice Chancellor Alec Cameron to say a few words?
Thank you, Alice. It's wonderful to be standing in your impressive home base in this extraordinary city that's an iconic symbol of the growth and potential of our great region. RMIT is proud of our partnership with Asia Society, including our collaboration on events such as this through the RMIT Asia Trade Investment Hub, which houses Asia Society Australia back on our Melbourne City campus. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Gareth Williams, the Australian Consul General in Hong Kong, Mr. Brett Stevens, Victoria's Commissioner to Greater China, Mr. Anthony Burblow, CEO of Asia Society Australia, Miss Alice Mong, our host this evening and Executive Director of the Asia Society Hong Kong Centre, Peter Chan, the CEO of ANZ in Hong Kong and our sponsor tonight, and all of our distinguished guests, friends and colleagues, including members of RMIT's alumni community. This is RMIT's 137th year as a distinct and proud institution with a bold vision for our role in the Asia Pacific. Founded in Melbourne in 1887 as a practical institution committed to generating positive impact in the communities we serve, applied education and research remains at our core today. Now, more than a century since our inception, we are Australia's largest education institution, the largest international education provider in Vietnam, and our partnerships across the region and around the world are flourishing. Evidenced by important occasions like this, where we come together as a community that recognises and values what it means to partner for impact in the region. RMIT's perennial purpose is to empower people and communities to adapt and thrive across generations, with education, research and civic engagement that are applied, inclusive and impactful. And our practical ventures, relationships and long-standing partnerships across the Asia-Pacific make us an ideal connection point for collaboration and understanding. Indeed, we see our Melbourne base as a front door for regional engagement. So we share a natural alignment with the Asia Society and its determination to promote economic and cultural exchange. And in times of unparalleled challenge and change, operating collaboratively across our economies of origin will be pivotal to our progress. Because of this, at RMIT, we consider ourselves obliged to engage in positive ways with the communities where we operate and we believe this is more important than ever before. As a region, our prosperity is linked to that of our neighbours, and progress is linked to the provision of accessible and relevant education, research, and the pursuit of shared outcomes. Knowing that, we must face into the generational shifts rapidly changing the nature and shape of the Asia-Pacific's workforce. Artificial intelligence, mass digitisation, environmental imperatives, and escalating healthcare pressures are just some of the most powerful. They're also changing the very nature of how we deliver education and how we conduct research. This is the perfect storm circling the greatest workforce disruption since the Industrial Revolution, heightened by social, environmental, and geopolitical flux. Estimates vary, and they're, let me say, notoriously hard to validate, but let us hypothesise that half the jobs of today may not exist in a decade or so, and that many of the jobs that will replace them are not yet known. But suffice to say, the school students of today will likely have much better job prospects as cybersecurity analysis than they will as accountants when they graduate. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's a challenge of the highest order, demanding that we remain in step with the times and ready to help new and returning students do the same. A challenge also because we must ensure no large segments of our population are left behind, and as the rate of progress escalates, so must our efforts to bring everyone on the journey. The most recent World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report found that businesses predict 44% of workers' core skills will be disrupted by 2027 because technology is moving faster than companies can train in response. It's also reported that analytical thinking, creative skills, artificial intelligence, and big data will become the top in-demand skills, along with leadership, social influence, curiosity, and lifelong learning growing in demand. And the landscape continues to shift and change at an accelerating pace. So with the region's economy expanding within this complex landscape, there is a large and growing population that will require education, workforce training, and support for digital transformation. Needless to say, this is not an environment in which we should operate in isolation. At RMIT, our unique strength lies in our capacity of partnership and in our willingness to work hand in hand with industry, with government, and with community across the region. Specifically, we already have a long history and deep relationships right here in Hong Kong. And these relationships are built on firm foundations, being a result of our commitment to use our scale and our expertise to contribute to the region we call home. We deliver education in collaboration with esteemed local institutions, and we undertake wide-ranging partnerships for mutual benefit. So let me briefly discuss both. Firstly, education is the cornerstone of opportunity. To that end, we have worked for more than 25 years with the Hong Kong Arts Centre and the Hong Kong Arts School, and more than 20 years with both VTC Shape and the Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group. And just this week, we celebrate graduation with the first two partners and their latest cohorts. The pleasure of attending graduation ceremonies for students of our partner programs is never lost on me. These moments reinforce the incredible impact we have on the lives of students beyond our core campuses, and equally how much we can achieve with our partners through open and collaborative partnerships built on shared values and shared aspirations. Our alumni from the Hong Kong Arts Centre have gone on to exhibit at prominent global arts events like the Venice Biennale and Art Basel. Our alumni from VTC Shape have designed and built some of the most iconic buildings in this vibrant city, making names for themselves across construction, engineering, and aviation. And our EMBA alumni from the Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group manage some of the world's finest hotels. What's more, through partnership in education and research, opportunities emerge, which is my second point. In my experience, what really elevates a partnership is when it is developed within a community, for a community, opening doors for the exchange of ideas, methodologies, and pathways. Examples are plentiful, but I'll share a couple. First, it's my privilege to announce a unique public art project, which you'll be able to enjoy next year, funded by Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australian Cultural Diplomacy Grants Program, with support from RMIT University School of Art and the Hong Kong Art School. Phantasms for Future Ecologies will present digital projection artworks by leading Australian artist and RMIT Professor Michaela Dwyer in the neighbourhood of Ti Kak Choi in Hong Kong. This installation is part of a broader urban renewal project led by Hong Kong Art Centre, which considers how public art can connect community, place and heritage with inspiring ideas about sustainable living. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are joined in the audience by two members of the project team, Gordon Lowe and Rebecca Chuang from the Hong Kong Art Centre. This project demonstrates deep connection to community, the outcome of working with the people of the place in which we operate, and with a determination to create positive outcomes together and for that place. Secondly, moving from art and culture to science, technology, engineering and maths, we have the Global Research Network Belt and Road Initiative platform. This is an independent research network that provides a global platform for researchers to share, collaborate and partner on research projects in logistics, trade and digital supply chains. Established in 2016, it's a great example of cross-regional collaboration, bringing together an extensive network of experts and thought leaders from 50 countries in specialist fields to broaden their outreach and generate meaningful impact and digital transformation. Leveraging AI and supply chain 4.0 technologies, RMIT researchers have received funding from Asia and Australia to provide expert advice on issues ranging from the complex network of maritime terminals to the use of multi-mode maritime train road infrastructure, from supply chain resilience to climate change to greening logistics infrastructure. This project demonstrates the power of collaboration at scale and the sharing of deep expertise for greater good. Through positive relationships and purposeful connections like these, we can ensure that the Asian Pacific growth story is one of success and shared prosperity. By working together in partnership, we can disperse our talent where it is needed most and support the constant evolution of knowledge, skills and mobility. In this way, we can ensure education becomes a vehicle to reduce inequalities rather than exacerbating existing inequities in employment and income. Conscious at all times that our commonalities are far greater than our differences. For RMIT, this perspective on collaboration and contribution is long held. This is why we have established industry and innovation hubs both in Melbourne and more recently in Hanoi, with plans to grow the hub network more widely across Asia Pacific. Likewise, our strong alumni networks are critical to our ability to hardwire the links between education, research, partnership and meaningful community outcomes. And we're looking to deepen our alumni connections here in Hong Kong, with plans to open a local alumni chapter in the near future. With around 50 local alumni present in the room, I think we can declare a starting quorum. Because at RMIT, we know that our success and our capacity for impact is only ever as good as the partners and the communities we engage in the process, which makes a gathering like this so meaningful. The connection between Australia and Hong Kong is a strong one. And I have enormous confidence in our capacity to foster regional collaboration that will enhance the lives of generations to come through the provision of in-demand skills and fostering of deep cultural intelligence in our graduates. By working together, we can create opportunities to connect government, industry, alumni, experts and academics on a shared agenda of social, economic and environmental benefit across our region and beyond. Thank you. Understand?
Can we now ask also Alec to join us? I'm delighted that I'm going to join by the two Alex, Professor Alec and Alex Bailey. I think those of you who have not had a chance to see Alex Bailey's bio, he was general manager responsible for leading the GTM business in AT&T, and Alex has lived all over the world in Dubai, Shanghai, and Sydney, and got his undergraduate bachelor's degree at RMIT, and has been a resident here in Hong Kong for the last 12 years. So I'm really delighted to welcome Alex Bailey here, and you were from Melbourne, and you were a 20-year industry professional in this area in the kind of the tech communication. So tell me, Alex, how has your undergraduate, your career in RMIT kind of shaped your journey where you are? And you've had a really illustrious global career, and how did that get started at RMIT?
Okay, so I appreciate the introduction. I think it would be first and foremost remiss if I didn't, as I reflect on my time at RMIT, also reflect on the time at the pub opposite the campus in the city. I think it's a cornerstone of any university experience. When I enrolled at RMIT, and I enrolled and subsequently did computer science, but it was actually back at a time when I didn't own a computer, and it was really just back in the 90s, observing emerging trends and deciding to go for it, right? And so when I really think back to sort of three key recollections that I have of my time at RMIT, so really the first was, as I said, getting in there, getting started, trying to learn how to do programming, and realizing that this is really, really hard. And so the sort of flunking midterm, and the support that I had though from the faculty at RMIT was really outstanding. And so, the reason it's a memory is I went from literally that point to excelling by the end of the first year at RMIT, and that's only through the strength of the faculty. The second experience is, having grown up in sort of suburban Melbourne, it was very much around this diversity. And quite frankly, I hadn't experienced an environment until then where, the closest, friends that I had and lab colleagues were from Sri Lanka and Vietnam and other locations. And sort of that exposure to a more diverse environment was tremendous. And then thirdly, during the time at RMIT, was able to also participate in an international university alliance program. And so that gave me a sort of the post 9/11 world, and it was the onset of online education. And so exposure to working with universities around the globe. And so sort of, take those three components together was really what gave me the confidence to, be able to launch into a career that firstly started at Telstra at home, but then also the confidence to pack up, move to Dubai and start a career that's now 17 years at AT&T and hopefully going strong, 12 of which here in Hong Kong.
Great, thank you. And Professor Cameron, I want to ask you, we have a lot of RMIT alumni here tonight, and quite diverse from the look of it. And you talked about RMIT, it's Australia is very attractive as a regional educational partner. It's not that far, not halfway around the world. But what do you think, what are some of the, what do you see as the competitive advantages in education of RMIT in Australia?
This is working? Yes, good. Certainly in terms of RMIT, I think the things that most differentiate us at this point in time, there are several things that are if not unique, then certainly very differentiating for RMIT. One is our established global presence. So we have, we are certainly one of the largest, if, I'd say we're at least one of the two largest Australian universities in terms of our offshore presence. So not only do we, like all other Australian universities, recruit students internationally to our home campus in Melbourne, but we have significant operations where we either partner or through our own campuses in Vietnam offer education within the region. So I've mentioned our partnerships here in Hong Kong. Suffice to say, we have a long-standing relationship in Singapore. We've been operating campuses for almost 25 years in Vietnam, with now more than 10,000 students, at our campuses in Vietnam. We have partnerships in India. We have some activities in Indonesia and so forth. So we're very large internationally. Secondly, and I think particularly importantly at this time, we are a dual sector university, which means we have both higher education, university education within the RMIT family, but we also have vocational education. We are also, provide technical education at sub-degree level. And I think as we increasingly look to meet the needs of employers, business, the economy, the reality is they need both, right? They need university-educated people for leadership roles in the organisation, but they also need technically and vocationally qualified people, which represent a substantial part of their workforce. So, that particularly in the context that the Australian government has been reviewing the long-term outlook for Australian post-school education, the need to better marry up and provide articulation for students between vocational education and higher education is particularly important given the rate of change that we're currently experiencing. I think the third thing I'd say about RMIT is we have a long tradition of being a very porous university. We in some sense are the antithesis of an academic ivory tower, right? We don't look internally to ourselves or to the sector for validation. We look externally to our employers, to government, to the communities in which we operate, and to our students to validate our purpose. So, we're very engaged, and we put a lot of emphasis on making sure that our graduates are job ready, and that the work that we undertake with industry is tailored on meeting their needs and solving real world problems. So I think that very practical, pragmatic and applied approach to education and research, and our genuine commitment to providing benefit in the communities in which we operate, I think are distinguishing characteristics.
Well, on that note, I'm going to ask Alex. You're kind of in this really fascinating. You were talking about studying computer science, and in your current role at AT&T, and what can you tell us? What kind of the skills and the careers. What has, right now we've done so many programs on AI recently, technology, and also Hong Kong's future in this area. But in your particular case, what do you think about talking about the future of kind of a modern and global competitive workforce? And from using your own example, your tech, your computer science background, without but back then it was the labs, right? So how from there to here?
Yeah, it's I find it quite fascinating. Sort of probably even less than 10 years ago, you could sort of have these multiple functions within organizations. That's one's the seller, one's the technical seller, and one's the architect. Sort of that, and now really these functions are converging, and it's a demand to be technical, right? You can no longer get away with the statement, I'm not technical, I'll bring my technical guy into the room. And I'm often drawn to the analogy of sort of the commercial television sort of being released in the US in 1939, and then in 1950 there was 12% of the population using it, and then today we had 2 years ago ChatGPT is released, and look at it, pervasive, really in all of our lives. So what I would say is two things. One is to be technical, like to be knowledgeable and technical in areas. I think, Alec, you mentioned cybersecurity, certainly data science, and all of the subsets of data science I think are really critical to success. But secondly, and I think probably even more importantly, the superpower is still the ability to communicate. And that's where, talking about culture exchanges and other programs, that is what's going to distinguish, one candidate from another. Quite frankly. So I think the ability to tie those two together is going to be in demand in every single industry. And whether you're working for a telco, a luxury retailer, a bank, all of these elements of data science and technology are so pervasive today that if you can tie technology and communication together, you'll be in good stead.
Okay, now, Professor Cameron, okay, you talk about workforce of the future and the skills that it's going to require. I mean, seriously, some of these positions 10, 20 years ago, we've never heard of. And there is going to be others that we'll never, moving forward. So how do you, and you also talk about the VTC, the vocational. I find that fascinating in terms of the collaboration. So going forward, I think we'll talk about the, kind of the need to contribute to the global social, economic, and environmental challenges. And to what extent does RMIT's approach to regional collaboration are going to make it succeed? I mean, you guys are ahead of the curve. 25 years ago, not that many. Now that seem to be the buzzword, but it's easier said than done. And you guys are ahead of the curve, so kind of your voice of experience here.
Look, I think we have a clear sense of what we're doing offshore. And I think it's not what I think many people in Australia assume is that Australian universities go, overseas to set up campuses so that we can, in some sense, succeed and repatriate funds and the home institution can benefit. I mean, I have a very strong sense of RMIT being a public university. It was established, by an act of Parliament in Australia to, provide education to meet the needs of individual students, but also, and of course, we also have a purpose with regard to our research activity, but there is clearly within our founding legislation in Australia an obligation on us to act in the public interest and actually to make a very positive societal contribution. My very strong conviction is when we go offshore, we behave the same way we behave in Australia. So we bring with us, not only the commitment to furthering the lives of individuals who are our students, but also a commitment to make a positive contribution in the community in which we operate. So if I pick on Vietnam as the largest and most successful example of our offshore activity, suffice to say, we are committed, as we are in all the countries we operate in, to actually not just providing education, but providing community benefit. What does that mean? In the case of Hong Kong, I won't provide specifics. Suffice to say, though, it has become, and certainly was during COVID, a very profitable activity for us in the sense that, we were inundated with applications during a time when Vietnamese students couldn't travel overseas for their education. They reverted to what they identified as being the best international university in Vietnam, which was RMIT. So suffice to say, our enrolments massively exceeded projections. I suppose it's fair to say during COVID, most of us couldn't work out how to spend money because there weren't many things to buy. And, in our case, it was difficult to hire staff on occasion. So suffice to say, during that period and subsequently, it's been quite a profitable activity for us. But we do not repatriate those funds to Australia. Those funds stay in our bank account in Vietnam and are applied against our continued development of our programs, our student support, our facilities, our infrastructure in Vietnam. And I think it's really important because I think, that's our raison d'etre. That's why we exist. And wherever we go, we don't look to work out, well, what can we, how do we as a colonialist benefit by going offshore and repatriating our profits? That's, we are actually moving to, commit to make a difference in the societies in which we locate ourselves, including here in Hong Kong.
Great. Alex, I kind of want to touch upon, looking at your CV, you also got another degree, a joint program, USC and Jiao Tong. So can you kind of talk about, I guess, I personally also have gotten an executive MBA here in Hong Kong, joint degree, and the importance of lifelong education. And, how do you see, and you also are continuing to learn. I just see you just finish your FT, non-executive director program. But and also that's also a question for Professor Cameron. Lifelong education. It seems like we're never going to stop learning, and I think in some ways that the way it should be. But your lifelong education journey.
Yeah. So I think as we were speaking earlier. Firstly, just touching on the experience at USC in Jiaotong in Shanghai, and I think that was sort of this every 10 years sort of feeling of needing to upskill, but very specifically at that time was orienting towards this cultural experience as well, and tying together the best of what a university experience in mainland China could bring, as well as the university experience from the US. And I guess subsequently that sort of geopolitical impact has not been helpful, but still the friendships that were fostered through that experience, and also that furthering of education for me personally, that enabled me to go one step further up within my organization, right, at AT&T. And so then just casting forward to literally the last sort of 6 to 12 months, FT program, again, broadening that network. But frankly speaking, sitting here today, really now out looking at areas around data science and sustainability, right? And I think as a lot of us are crystal balling, either for ourselves or for our loved ones or our kids, right? Certainly those are the two areas that are standing out from the conversations that I'm having across sort of multidiscipline, multi-industry. And looking to pursue to drive sort of the next chapter of my own career.
Yeah, let me say something about lifelong education. It's fundamental to our purpose. But if I try and put it in context, a fair bit of research was done for the review that the Australian government conducted last year with regard to post-school education, and that review was intended to make sure that Australia is producing sufficient qualified graduates to support the needs of the economy, going out 20 years and beyond. And what was clearly identified is we currently in Australia have a bit over half the population of school leavers go on to university, and then an additional share go on and do vocational education. Even if we had 100% of school leavers going on to vocational and university education, that won't be sufficient for the roles that are emerging in the future. Now, I mean, clearly, one of the mechanisms Australia uses to overcome that is immigration. But the more important, workforce are the people who are into their careers but are in areas that are going to be declining. And we've got I believe, a social obligation to make sure that we provide the opportunities for those people to maintain their currency in the workplace by continuing education. So it's not only about ambitious people being, aspirational and wanting to climb the ladder and seeing that further education will support that. It's actually making sure that we have sufficient numbers of people with the relevant skills that we need in the future, which we can't just get by sending higher proportions of school leavers to university. We've actually got to tap into the larger community of people who are already in employment, but who are in areas of the economy which are going to decline in need and decline in value. So we are very much committed to not only supporting people leaving school, but working with the mode of delivery of programs so that they are more accessible for people who need to earn while they're learning. And make them accessible for people who's, to be quite frank, are, already in employment, have obligations, have families, have mortgages and so forth, but need further education.
Okay. I think I'm going to make this the last question so that we have more time for, networking with the reception. The question is to the both of you. What is the one thing that you would like to see moving forward that could foster more collaboration between Australia, and the region in Asia? Because right now you're hearing a lot of areas, other parts of the world, kind of minimizing that. But so what do you think, both of you? What are some of the opportunities for Australia and Asia?
Yeah, sure. I think it was touched on earlier, is that no matter as the world gets smaller and we're able to get from Hong Kong to Melbourne and back in a day, the need for ongoing educational exchange programs or cultural exchange programs, but really that need to better understand each other, has never been greater. I'm going to cheat a little bit because of the forum that we're in here and say, secondly, one of the things, and I'm so pleased to see the number of RMIT alumni here. So, I think very specifically strengthening the alumni network here in Hong Kong and then being able to extend that into more of a global alumni forum, I think would be wonderful. And I think a lot of us would greatly appreciate that forum.
Look, I think one of the things I'd like to see more of is more interchange of people. I do think that's critical for peace and prosperity in the world. I think there are emerging tensions, and I think education's always been a wonderful form of soft diplomacy. I think if people get the opportunity to live abroad, if they get the opportunity to study abroad, they learn something about different countries, different cultures. I think they're far less likely to have, let me say, narrow views, which is what probably pushes different groups into conflict with each other. My concern, probably for a couple of reasons, is that there's been some decline in terms of not necessarily global movement of students, but I think we sometimes face challenges, suffice to say, in countries in which we operate, just in terms of governments on the one hand having a desire to see the inbound investment associated with setting up campuses abroad, but then in some sense make it difficult to operate sometimes during the laws they put in place. And then I'm also conscious that in Australia at the moment, Australia is introducing some restrictions and limits on inbound students coming to Australia for education, and once again driven by concerns about cost of living and accommodation and immigration and so forth. But I think that and that coupled with I think we had a great track record as a country of lots of our students going abroad prior to COVID. I think it's fair to say that hasn't recovered to the full extent yet. So I think they're things that I'm a little bit concerned about at the moment, that things that government's doing, choices individually. And look, I'm sure some students would say, well, my flying around the world is contributing to greenhouse effects and climate change and so forth. So there's all these sort of tensions at the moment. But I think once we stop, people travelling and mixing and communicating and sharing ideas and understanding, we're heading in a negative direction. And I think we just need to try and work out how do we encourage this, continual, when I say movement of students. Hopefully we'll find some green solutions that enable them to travel with much smaller environmental footprint. But nonetheless, I do think that's, as I said, I think peace and prosperity rest very heavily on individual exchange of people.
Well, on that note, thank you both. And I'm really delighted that we can do this tonight because I was looking at our program, we've been in this building, this campus for 12, 13 years. We've hosted a lot of university. In fact, tomorrow we have an American University president speaking. And we also hosted a lot of alumni forums from schools from Europe, US, Asia. But RMIT is our first from Australia for this program. So I'm really, really delighted that we had the opportunity to welcome you here, Professor Cameron, and thank you, Alex. And hopefully, in the future alumni forum, maybe, you'll consider Asia Society, because we are about lifelong education, I think. And it's also important to have this personal connections. I think what you touch upon, yes, we can find greener solutions, I think, with the help of RMIT alums. But I think nothing replaces this in person. I think there are just too many divisions around the world, too many conflicts around the world. And I do believe education is is one of the solutions, and we have to work toward that. So on that note, thank you all for being here tonight, and we're going to continue with the reception for a little bit, and I look forward to welcome you all back to Asia Society for our programs, and maybe future program with Asia Society of Australia as well as RMIT. So thank you all, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.